Nancy, welcome to the program. Let's talk about school choice. Republicans cannot agree on this. Suburban and rural Republicans have really held the line on this thing. But here we are in the final 30 days of this session. If this were to pass by some chance, what do you expect that would look like at Plano ISD?
Well, I just know that the impact on the district would be $9,800 for every student that leaves the district. But, we don't have a pro rata cost reduction when we see a student leave, because we might have a classroom with 23 kids in it. And then if we have a classroom that now has 22, we're still paying the same lights, the bus transportation, and the teacher cost. So it becomes a fixed cost issue. Differential.
Do you expect students to actually leave, though? I'm just not convinced that there's going to be this exodus from public schools like many people believe. Do you think that's going to happen?
I don't really know. I just know that there's so much pressure for it. So I must believe that there must be a reason for it. I can't imagine why the governor and lieutenant governor are pushing so hard for it. So I can't predict, but I would expect they would.
Yeah, I'm curious what you think about the politics of this. You watch a lot of what happens at the state capitol. Suburban and rural Republicans in the House have said, no, we're not interested in doing this. The lieutenant governor told me the issue is not dead this session. And here we have Governor Abbott still out and about across the state, still campaigning for this, still promoting this. Mm-hmm. That tells me he's working something in the background. Is this something, if it doesn't pass, it goes to a special session?
Well, I'm not one of the legislators, but that's kind of what I hear in the halls when I'm down in Austin. It might go to a special session because I think they want it really badly. I think, it just depends on the will of the legislators this time. But I know that, quite frankly, education savings accounts or vouchers or whatever you want to call them, anytime you are taking money away from public education, we're already hurting for funding. So it's not a good thing for us. And that's why we hold a position that oppose any use of public taxpayer funds for private schools.
Let's talk about the accountability is a huge issue. Let's talk about funding for schools for a moment here. House Bill 100 does that this session. What's different about it this year, and how will that impact your district and others across the state?
Well, we started the session with the comptroller saying there's a $33 billion surplus. So I know everyone has their hands out. I do know that we in public education haven't seen an increase to the basic allotment since 2019.
Nancy, explain to our viewers what the allotment is for those who aren't familiar with the terminology.
Yeah, the basic allotment is how schools are funded. And so there's a certain amount that's allotted for every student that's in attendance.
And continue on with that if you don't mind too. So the funding, the allotment hasn't changed since 2019.
Right.
This bill changes it though.
This bill does change it a little bit. In the first year of the biennium, they make a budget for a 2-year period. They call it a biennium. And so in the first year, it goes up $90 per student. And in the second year, it goes up $50 per student. So at the end of 2025, the basic allotment will total $6,300. But I will just say that since 2019, since we're talking about that year, inflation has compounded up by 22%. And I think everyone is feeling that at home, at the grocery store. People's rents are going up. And so here in the school districts, we have the same thing. So our fuel costs are up, our property casualty insurance is up, security officers cost more, custodial, utilities, all of those are a lot higher, yet our revenue is fixed, except now they are adding the $140.
Is that enough to really make a difference?
Well, I will say it will yield about $7 million in Plano ISD. And so I want to give you a reference for that. In Plano ISD, we have about under 7,000 employees. So we have a lot of personnel costs, obviously. And so if we want to give a raise, in general, a raise costs $4 million, a 1% raise. And the administration is looking at perhaps considering a 3% raise, which probably doesn't meet cost of living needs, but it's about what we can afford. And that would be a $12 million cost. So if we're going up in the basic allotment, and it gives us $7 million, that answers your question. It doesn't really fill all of our cost needs.
The other big issue this session is school security after what we saw happen in Uvalde a year ago now. House Bill 3 does a number of things, but perhaps the biggest is it requires an armed security officer, an armed individual at every school campus in the state. Does Plano ISD already have an armed security officer at all of its campuses? If not, how much do you expect this to cost the district?
Well, we have 73 campuses, and 42 of those are elementary schools, and the balance are secondary, middle, high school, senior high schools. And so we do have an SRO at every campus in the secondary level. And that is, let me look at that cost. I think that is about $2.5 million a year for those campuses. So if we were to add armed security officers, and we want them to be fully trained and
Sure.
ready to go and know how to work with our students and, you know, be around kids, right? If we were to add 42 of those officers, it would cost us about $4.2 million additionally every year.
And the state is putting some money in House Bill 3 to pay for some of this. Is the state money enough to cover it all, or would taxpayers have to make up the rest of it?
Well, what I just quoted you is just the cost for the salaries of those new additional added employees, but that doesn't include any onboarding or administrative cost. You know, it's going to take a little while to get people trained to be in that position.
Yeah.
So I think that the amount that House Bill 3, as it's written right now, would yield us about 4.9 million. And if the salaries for those additional employees is 4.2 million, it would help us cover that, but salaries only. That doesn't include any technology or, you know, other security measures and equipment that we might need.
And let me back up one more time and ask the numbers again. How many, if this were to pass, how many additional officers would you need to comply with this law?
Well, we would need 42 new officers. And what I keep hearing, you know, on TV, in the newspaper, that there's a labor shortage in all industries, but I know there's a staffing shortage in police officers. They're working really diligently, and they're having to give raises to attract officers to come and be on their police department force. So I think that will be one of our biggest challenges. It's not so much the funding, unless they pull funding away from this bill, but it will be, you know, where are we going to find these individuals, and how are we going to get them trained? And according to the bill as it's written, it takes effect in this upcoming school year, 23-24. So that's a really quick timeline. We need flexibility to ramp this up.
Every session, it seems like education, you know, shows up somewhere, obviously, because it's a huge expenditure for the state. How would you rank this session and the issues that are before legislators compared to previous ones?
Wow. I mean, we've had multiple different sessions. I don't know. It's really hard. I've been around. This is my 13th year on the school board. And so
Yeah.
probably, what is that, my 7th legislative session? I think 2019, when they did House Bill 3, was probably the biggest transformational change for public education and funding and some of the initiatives that they brought forward. I wouldn't rate this session as high, because I think there's been things that have taken the forefront, culture wars and things like that really don't happen in the classroom, but they're spending time on that. I'd rather see them talk about accountability, assessment and accountability, and how to do that fairly and measure what matters in our classroom, what's really going on with our kids. But you know, school finance is my #1 priority. In Plano, we are hit hard by what is called Recapture, and we can talk about that another day.
And that definitely hits you guys and a number of others. At the end of the day, though, when the gavel falls at the end of the month here, the end of May, are school districts going to come out on top, underneath, or where after lawmakers get finished?
You know, that's a hard call. I don't know, but if all we're getting is what's in House Bill 100 that did pass today and it goes over to the Senate, and then we've got to watch what they will do to it. It might become, I've heard, a Christmas tree bill where they put a lot of amendments on it, hang it on a Christmas tree. And what we're hoping that they don't do is add an ESA or a voucher to that. But I outlined some numbers for you as far as just what it costs for safety and security. And it looks like the amount in that basic allotment increase will chew that up completely.
Wow. What else can you think of, Nancy, you'd like to add or point out that we haven't necessarily touched on with what's happening in Austin?
You know, I think about this when I talk to legislators and they say Texas is the 9th largest economy in the world. And I'm so proud of, I'm a 5th generation Texan, so I'm proud of that. And I want to keep that. I want to sustain that. And I believe that public education is the fabric of our community, and it is what will give us the educated workforce to continue that successful economy. But we are funded 42nd in the United States. Texas is number 42 on funding for public education. And I feel like there needs to be an investment in our public education system so we do maintain that educated workforce and sustain that amazing, robust economy that we currently have.
Nancy, thank you for the time.
You're welcome.